Hello everybody and welcome to today's session. Just want to welcome everyone and yeah, we're going to have a really good session in terms of what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, this is the video editing, preparing and importing footage session. So we're going to explore, how to deal with our footage and get everything going into Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. My name is Tom Strnad, and I am the lead digital artist of the Creator Space. So again, welcome and thanks for joining us. So in terms of what we'll look at today, I have some slides here. So we'll just look at the overview of what we're going to do. So here it is right here. So we're going to look at types of footage, and then we're going to also look at what kind of camera footage, offloading from the Blackmagic Pocket Camera. Then we're going to look at hard drives, formats, and data management. And then we're going to look at just the nonlinear editing software. Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve is what we're using. And then, how do we start a project and import footage? So how do we do that? And, looking at some of the adjustments we can do, adding LUTs, the lookup tables for raw files, naming and organizing footage into bins, and then really getting everything ready to edit. But we really, the main thing to explore is how do we get footage from cameras and make it work for us, and be able to put it into our computer systems and have that whole idea working with us. So how does this work, and what kind of elements are we going to look at? Let's really, the main thing, it really comes down to starting with a camera. So we have, this is the Blackmagic Pocket Camera that is available through the library. So this is the camera that you could take out. There is a proficiency test. And then by taking this out, you film on it, record on it. And then what we need to look at is getting the cards out. So we'll look at that aspect. So how does that work? We can click this open, and then we get our two cards here. So it consists of an SD card and a CFast card. So that's really that first element, is getting these cards out. So we click, slide it out. That's our SD card, and then this big card right here. Click, push in, and then that will just slide out as well. So that gives us our two pieces of data, our media from the camera that we can then offload. So that's really important. That's like the first step, is getting. This is essentially our footage, right? So we need this footage to be ready to go out onto the computer and then edit with, right? So that's step one, and going in that route. So yeah, so footage then consists of a few things. So we might have things on the camera directly. We might also look at having importing things from other devices and graphics and that kind of stuff, and then also audio. So we could be importing music, sound effects. So that's the type of footage. So we're just not even just talking about camera footage only. We're also talking about getting other footage in. So you might have a blend of photos, graphics. You might have some logos, and then some of the audio, like music, sound effects, that type of thing as well. So yeah, so that's the types of footage that you can have. So that's just good to look at and figure that out. Okay, so moving along, offloading the camera footage. So I just showed you guys the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K has those two types of cards. So again, the SD card and the CFast 2.0 card. So this is the little SD card. It's really tiny, and it's like it's just flash memory. It's a 128 gig card, and then we also have this CFast 2 card. And this is 128 gigs as well. And this is the one that you want to use for when you're shooting in like 4K or Ultra HD with the camera, because this has really fast read-write speeds, versus these ones are kind of more of the standard, for HD type footage, right? So that's kind of, you have the two cards. Also, if you're shooting in HD, if you finish from this card, it will then record to this card if you have something really long. So it gives you that continuous shooting ability as well. So that's kind of cool. So both cards I mentioned here you can use for recording. and the recorded video files that need to be offloaded to your editing computer. And that's what we're going to look at today. How do we offload and put it onto our editing computer? So that's an important part of offloading. So how do we do that? We will look at that shortly. But first, I just want to look at hard drives, formats, and data management, just to look at this concept. People ask a lot, how do we get this to work, and what do we get? How do we get an exFAT format? So the term exFAT is the type of format that I recommend, and we recommend at the CreatorSpace to use, because it's a universal format that you can use on Windows OS and Mac OS. So you can use them between both systems. So that's quite useful. The recording cards, we pre-format them on the cameras to be exFAT as well. So this actual media too, needs to be formatted specifically. So they're in an exFAT format. So technically, if you take the camera out, you record on these, you can then put it on your Windows computer or on a Mac computer as well. So it can work with both. So that's a really useful thing to know. Now, the data management is something really important, and it's I just want to introduce this, and we'll do a demo of what to do. But you want to label everything and the footage as you offload it and put it onto drives. So really the root is we're getting stuff off the camera, putting it onto some sort of a hard drive, labeling it with the project, date, other information. So if you shot, let's say, with multiple cameras, A or B camera, you then want to be able to back up, to have that all labeled. So the next step, what you'll do is you want to back up all the footage. And we recommend at least 2 different locations. So that's usually a local drive, a local hard drive that could just be part of your computer, or an extra editing drive that maybe you have connected to your computer, and then a backup external drive. And what does that usually look like? So I have a couple drives here. So this is like a kind of a lacy, rugged drive. This can have impacts. It can drop and stuff. Not that I recommend dropping hard drives, but it can withstand some small drops and not get destroyed. So this kind of a drive is one. This is like a regular drive, USB 3 output. So it's something familiar. We've probably seen something like this a lot. Then they're starting to use these types of drives, which are really interesting. So these are like Lacy makes another drive like this, and these can then be solid state drives. So the previous one was a regular drive, spinning platters on the drive, and then this is a solid state drive, meaning that it's just like those cards. There's no spinning drives in it. It's just an actual data in a solid state drive situation. So it's really neat how that can work. Now, the difference here is that we start to get into what's called the USB-C or the Thunderbolt 3 type connections. So these kinds of universal USB, they can go up or down, which is really handy. You no longer have to worry about which way is the right way. Plugs in this way, and then depending on the type of computer you have, usually when you buy the drive, you'll get a regular USB output, and you'll also get the regular USB C to USB-C, so it'll be the same ends on both sides. So these types of external drives would be my location 2, and then my location 1 would be that the drive on the computer. So that's what I would recommend in terms of making sure that everything's backed up and working properly in your for editing purposes. Okay, so here let's move on from there. So that's the hard drives, the formats, and data management. Now, again, so backup, I can't stress that enough because it's happened to me. I'll have something on an editing computer. You might do an update. You could erase it accidentally. Things can happen. Drives can fail. They're not fail proof. So again, when they're regular spinning drives, traditional hard drives, they, last 3 to 10 years, but you don't know when it might fail within that time. And so, backing things up is really safe. And then if one of the backups fails, then again, make a second backup, right? So that backup process is really, really important. By having it in 2 locations, you don't have to worry about something happening to the computer. So you can even go so far as storing the second location somewhere else than your editing area. So, you could put it in even a fireproof safe if it's really important. So again, we want to think about, we think about footage like, okay, we just got some footage. Let's say shot something outside, that's fine. What happens if it's a one-time event and you can never capture it again? So think about the importance of how some footage could be really important. But I like to say treat all your footage with that kind of importance, and then you have everything is really safe, everything's backed up, and then it works a lot better, that way to make that work. Okay, so let's move on from there. So that's the hard drives, formats, data management, and then from there. So now types of media, and we get a lot of questions about this, and I thought I'd just kind of go over some of these ideas. But there's these like codecs and wrappers and the file types. And we hear a lot about these. So there's an MPEG file, and that's an MP4, that's a video format. So similar to MP3, it's MP4, so it's a video format. Then there's usually an H.264 codec, and that's just a fancy name for the type of code that it uses to compress video information into that MP4 file. So the wrapper is the MP4, and the codec is how it generates the data within that wrapper file. So think of the wrapper file as just like if you have a Word document, that .doc is, for Word, that extension. So that's the wrapper of it. And then the codec is the text within that document, or the video, footage within that wrapper. So that's a good way to, kind of think of that idea. QuickTime files, that's another wrapper, and that could be with an H.264 codec, or there's also something called Apple ProRes codec. The Blackmagic cameras can shoot in that Apple ProRes mode as well. So it's just good to know these kinds of codecs and file names, because people will ask you, sometimes they might ask you, what do you prefer? Do you want an MPEG-4 file? Do you want a QuickTime file or something else? Now lastly, the Blackmagic Pocket Camera can shoot a Blackmagic RAW file, BRAW, B-R-A-W, and that's used for Blackmagic Pocket 4K capture, and that's like a 4K RAW, or it's there's different formats it can shoot in as well, but that's like a raw format that allows you to change some of the metadata of the file, if you will, as you're editing as well. So it's a very powerful tool. It's less data consuming, so you can comparably use 4K with something about the same size of an HD Apple ProRes file, and that's really the cool thing about it, is that it's a real good compression format that can allow you to access things in higher resolutions without necessarily needing a whole new computer or hard drives to function with that. So on that note too, talking on the hard drive side, regular computer hard drives nowadays can handle HD footage quite well. And then once we get to 4K, you start to need more data capability. So a regular hard drive will usually be about 100 megabits per second or so. And then with 4K, you start to really want to have about 300 to deal with the 4K data requirements. And the more the better. So, 600 to 700 is an ideal range, and that requires solid state drive. So they're still a little bit expensive, but they're getting cheaper and cheaper, just like hard drives used to be really expensive. I remember getting a 40 gigabyte hard drive that was, $500. And, now they give those away on a keychain when you go to a film premiere or something. So it's really, the context of everything will change. Solid state drives are getting cheaper, but definitely, if you want to be working in 4K, if you get like a solid state type drive, like one of these, this can work really well, and you will need to use the Thunderbolt 3 cable and capabilities of your computer to access that maximum speed. So a solid state drive and a regular USB port will still act like a regular drive, a little bit faster, but you want that throughput of a Thunderbolt 3 cable into your computer. Then you can do 4K. So the computers that we have set up at the Blue Mountains Public Library, and now at the Wasaga Beach Public Library, and coming soon to the Conway Public Library, all feature a solid state drive or a RAID type drive. So it has an external drive that can handle 4K footage. So you know, you're always welcome to come and use those computers. We really want people out there. So if you're a member of those libraries, you can access those computers as video editing computers. So, you know, if you shoot everything we talk about today, you can do the same thing on those computers as well and, you know, offload to them. Okay, so the system we're going to look at today, Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, it's free, and that's how we demo with it, and we've adopted it as our nonlinear editing software because it is totally free. You can download it free. We're at version 17 right now, and you can also get a studio version. So the free version goes up to 4K, then the studio version unlocks some more of the graphics elements and processes and some sound elements as well. And that's about $400 to purchase. But it is the studio versions we have loaded on all the library iMacs. So those are 27-inch Retina iMac computers that have the DaVinci Resolve Studio system loaded on them as well. Now, in terms of RAM, just one more thing on the kind of tech spec side of computers. RAM, really you're looking at a base minimum of 8 gigs RAM at least to operate any kind of editing system. 16 gigs is really truly the base kind of minimum. There's M1 processors now in the Apple computers, so those are a little bit different. So if you're using regular computers, we recommend getting 32 gigs of RAM for future-proofing your computer. If you're out looking to buy something new, try to go that way because it will help a lot in the future with 4K or Ultra HD footage. If you're just going to be shooting in HD and you're happy with that format, then 16 gigs would be our recommendation as well. And then again, for the M1 processor, get the entire 16 gig. It's about like a 3240 gig equivalent because of how it's designed. So, that RAM part is really important as well. The hard drive plus that random access memory to pre-feed footage, because again, it has to play frames. We're talking about video and not just photos. So again, computers will play a role. If you're having any issues with your home computer, again, please come and visit the libraries. We've built and designed those computers so that they can handle all the video files that we're potentially working with the Blackmagic cameras. Okay, so moving on, importing footage, starting a project and importing. So let's demo this. I'm going to move along to getting that that going. So let me just adjust my focus here so we can kind of see the whole system. So here's kind of the layout of the system. I'm just going to escape out of here. Now, in terms of getting the footage in somewhere, so here, for example, is an SD card. I'm going to just put it in this system here to load. So then what I'm going to do is once that shows up, so you can see down here, it showed up as a computer icon there of a drive. So it's right here. And you can label all your cards as hard drives as well, which is really handy. Now I have like a main editing one here, this one right here. So what I'll do, again, I'll start with naming a file. So I'm just going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to put in footage, demo, March 4th, 2021. And you can see how, again, that organizing starts right away, labeling footage and figuring out what it is. So I'm going to say March 4, 2021, A cam for this card. So that's the SD card. I've put it just into an SD card reader. The iMacs have them on the back, or if we're using something like the MacBook Pros, there would be an external card reader that you can get. So I'm going to double click that. So I've created a folder, and then what I want to do is just take what's on this file here. I'm just going to go click, and I'm going to hit Shift to select them all. And I'm just going to drag them right in. Just like to drag and drop over. It's going to copy all the files. And it's just going to take a sec. And this is how we start with importing. So if that's the card that was off the camera, footage directly from the camera, it just takes a few minutes to load in. And as that's happening, let's look at this as well. So what I'm going to do here with this, we have these card readers that will come with the Blackmagic Pocket 4K cameras. So the CFast 2 just needs to go into one of these readers, and they'll be either you know, a USB or USB-C type connection. So that just needs to get plugged in somewhere. So I'm just going to plug it into the back of the computer. So you can see that the SD card's been loaded. Now I have all the footage on my internal hard drive. Then what I would do is we're going to connect external hard drive. So we'll just do a couple stages here. I'm just going to hook up my USB port here, cable. Okay, so what I've done here is I've attached my external drive. I have a system drive behind the monitor here. This is the external drive. So I'm going to use this external drive as my you know, second drive, right? And that's great because then I can you know, use that. So A002, that's going to be my other card. Okay, so again, so I've done March 4th. I'm going to call this March 4th B-Cam. I'm just making it a demo as if we shot something today. So that's kind of the idea with this demo. So B-Cam, I'm double clicking on the CFast 2 card from the Blackmagic drive. Again, I'm gonna, I can do command to click on each one, have all three highlighted. I'm just gonna drag and drop them right in there, which is great. That's gonna copy a little bit faster than the SD card. Okay. Okay, so that's the two cards. So I have this is the CFast 2 card, this is the SD card right there, those two drives. Now I have this one as my external drive. So here is, I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to call it March 4, 2021 video footage backup. Okay, and then from there, now what I'll do is take both of those. So you can see I got my footage demo backup folder. I'm going to just take that, drag it over here, and it's going to copy everything over. It's going to probably take about a minute, right? It just says about a minute. That's great. And what that means is it's going to copy everything over, and then I have that backup done. So I have it on my internal drive, right? So this is the internal drive. I've now put it onto an external drive, and now it exists in two places. So once that's done copying, about less than a minute, it's telling me just a few gigs left there. Once that's done, I'm then able to, I can erase what's on those cards and put them back into the camera. So that's always important to get it ready for the next time. And all I want to do is just check that you know, the file sizes are the same. So I'm going to right click, get info. It's going to tell me that, oops, I'm not getting the info. It's just copying over. So we'll just give that a moment. Okay, so 2.65 gigs, 7 items. So that's great. And same with, and then we just want to see this one. So I'm going to right click that, get info, 3.25 gigs, 4 items. So we want to do the same test, basically make sure that, you know, the same files are on the same data sizes. So my backup, I'll go get info. You can see it matches 3.25, 4 items. So that's basically, we're checking that the data is copied in full. Get info, this is the second one. So let's just right click the ACAM, get info, 2.648, 2.648, 7 items, 7 items. That means our copies and backups are identical. All the data is there. Then one more thing I like to do is just double click on it. And I like to just click on the footage and watch it and make sure that it can play. So random spot checking through your footage. There's not a lot of files in this case, but it can be really helpful just to make sure that it's going to be able to play and work and everything. So that's great. So that's working. So all of that footage works. A cam, I'm going to check the B cam footage, double click. See the footage, great. Okay, so that works. So everything's been backed up now. So it exists in 2 locations. So that's really the first step of getting our stuff loaded. So now what I can do is I can go back to the CFast 2 card, this A002. I can choose all of these and I can delete them. So if I go a shift, I can go right click, move to trash. And I'm going to do the same with this one. Right click, move to trash. And then what I will do is go to trash, empty trash. And that's really important. You want to make sure that you always empty your trash bin, because otherwise it will stay on that drive. It will take space up until you empty it. So you actually need to do that emptying to get rid of it off the drive. Now from there I can eject, and I'll eject the other one. And that's it. They can be remounted back into the camera. So I have the card, and then I can put it back into the camera slot, slide it in. It's gonna click and put in the CFast as well. So everything's reloaded, ready to go. It's been offloaded into the computer. It exists on the external drive, internal drive, 2 spaces. You can also, if you've ever, if you think your computer's struggling or you've had some issues technically with it, you can always do a 3rd location. Doesn't hurt if you want to be extra safe. But at a minimum, I would always do the 2 locations. So that's great. Okay, so we've offloaded our footage. We've brought it all in. That's all fantastic. And then what we're going to do is now we are going to open up Blackmagic Resolve. So I'm just going to click on the little logo down here. It's going to just load it up. So I'm using the Studio 17. This is, again, available on the computers at the libraries. That's just going to take a second to load up. Good time to have a little bit of coffee. And as that loads in, we will see where our footage is. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to just create, I'll just go to my local database here. And I'm going to just open up a new project. It's untitled. That's a blank slate, so it's ready to go that way. That works nicely. And now there's a few tabs. So I'm going to go down to the Media tab. And this is where I like to organize all my footage and get things going. So over here, where my mouse is, you'll see there's like a master. And that's the master folder, if you will, for the entire project. So everything's sorted as in bins in editing software. It's called bins because film used to be in big rolling bins. You'd hang the film up and it was in a bin. So rather than calling it folders, that's why we come with the name bins, and film footage goes into different bins. So that's the first thing I'll do is new bin, and I will call it, so remember we had March 4, 2021, A cam. Okay, that's one. And I know my other bin is B cam. So I'm going to just go ahead and create that. So again, you can see the organization is all about date and what camera it is. You can also be organizing your footage. It could be camera rolls. So for example, if it's roll card 1, you can then shoot the next card can be card 2 and so on. So sometimes you might want to organize it that way. If you know there's going to be a lot of footage, you can do card numbers. But I would still recommend putting the dates, because then sometimes it helps to cross-reference what day was it shot on, and sometimes that really helps to identify things, especially if you've been shooting it yourself. You'll remember that it was a certain, a Saturday you shot something. You can go back and find that footage in Saturday versus looking at it as card 23. Might be a little bit more obscure. So do what you can. More information doesn't hurt. Less information will always hurt. So definitely you can add more to this bin data and information. Now with it open, what it represents is each time I click one of these, this whole blank area represents the inside of the bin, which is really fun. So now what I can do is I just right clicked and I'm going to go import media. It's also Command I on the Mac OS. So I'm going to go import media. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just find my footage. So here's my footage demo. And remember, we're putting ACAM into ACAM. So I'm going to do that. And what I will do is, again, I'm going to shift, click on that, open. Okay, and what it's going to do is going to give me this warning and say, hey, change project frame rate. So the frame rate is a default. This footage is shot in 23.98 frames per second. So I always like to just say, yes, let's change it. And then it's going to be in the right format. And now we can double click and all our footage is there. You can have it listed. You can have it as little thumbnails, which always helps. I like to be visual and see it visually. So that's a really nice way to do it. I will repeat that for the BCam. You can see now when I click on, that's the ACAM bin. This is the BCam bin and it's empty. I will right click, import media. And now I'm going to find the BCam folder that I offloaded. And again, I'm going to just do command in this case, just to click those three, open, and our footage is loaded. So that's great. So all our footage is loaded. Now, this is all non-destructive and it's all virtually linking to the hard drive. And that's why I spent time talking about the hard drive and the performance things, because all the editing comes down to being able to play it back off of the hard drive. It's virtually linking to the hard drive. Nothing's being destroyed or copied. It just links to that file. If the hard drive can play the file, it plays it smoothly in the editing software. If the hard drive is really slow, it will stutter and not be able to play it back. There's no actual importing, and this is something that used to be in editing systems and software, but now it's just virtually linking. So it's like a media link. It's not an actual ingestion of the footage. So when we go importing, we're kind of not really importing. We're essentially linking to the hard drive. This is why the data management becomes key, because if you were to delete all the footage off that hard drive, it no longer will exist in the editing software. So unlike other programs where sometimes you import elements and then it becomes part of the file, I'm thinking elements like Photoshop or Affinity Photo, putting in graphic elements into a file, those will continue to be there as you save it. Whereas something like an Illustrator or designer software, sometimes those files are just linked because it's rasterizing it in like vector and so on. So those kind of, some software will link, some software actually imports it. So it's always important to think about that. And you got to think about what is the file size. This whole project will be, maybe 1 meg or so. But remember, our whole footage could be 1 terabyte. So, if a whole project had to be 1 terabyte plus your footage, that would be a lot of storage space. So that's why it's just virtually linking. So that's just an important note to remember. Okay, so now let's look at some of the elements we can do. So this for example, this shot is shot in a Blackmagic RAW format. So, what does that mean? So here, it tells us up here in the metadata, which is really handy. It tells us the Blackmagic RAW frame rate and the overall resolution of it as well. So we can go to the inspector and we can look at what kind of the metadata, what is the image and so on. Now what I'm going to do is let's first look at adding the lookup table. So what is a LUT or a lookup table? So if we shoot something in a raw mode, there isn't a lot of color. And I just want to give like a comparison. This one is in a regular HD format, translated into that format. You can see there's a color in it, versus this one is in a raw format. Oops, double click on that. This one's in a raw format. You can see it's kind of not a lot of color. And that's really the big difference. Okay, so now let's look at that. If I right click this, I can go to LUT and I can choose a LUT. Now Blackmagic has predetermined LUTs here, which is really handy. Blackmagic Design. And in this case, it's the Pocket 4K film to extended video. Now we can use the 4K film to video, extended video version 4 or the non-extended. So let's just let's do the extended video. And you can see now what it's done. It's added color and contrast. Okay, and now let's go, I can take the LUT off. And you can see now it's gone gray and without all the color. So that's what the lookup table does. It's basically taking the raw footage and adding that base grade to the actual raw footage. So let's go back, and again, we're just gonna leave that. There's different ones, so you can always explore some of these. There's like film look, so you can make it look like a Kodak stock. Again, it's gonna be really particular, and you'd wanna, kind of prepare for that beforehand. So I'm just gonna go over here. Okay, and I'll do the same with this one. Go to the LUT, and I just scroll down to Blackmagic Design, and I'm going to do the 4K film to video 4. So that's great. And again, if I double click, you can see now we have that color and data. Let's look at the B camera. Here's some raw footage as well. I'm going to go to the LUT, Blackmagic, the Pocket 4K. Right, and you can see how it's added color, vibrance, contrasts, right? So from something that's kind of bleak, I'm gonna be able to add a LUT, the lookup table. So that's how we would do that. And you can just go shot by shot. You can also select a bunch of these by using command. So I'm just hitting command on the keyboard. I can select all of them, right click, and then it would apply the LUT. I can go to find it here and apply the LUT to all of them. And now all the footage will have the LUT. So if you have hundreds of clips that you're applying the same LUT to, just use the command. You can also do command A, and it will select all of your footage, and we go from there. So the next thing we can do is we can, let's look at if this footage has some audio in it as well. So I'm gonna right click, go to clip attributes. And this is where we can look at modifying some of the attributes as well. So if I go to audio, and let's say I want it to be in multiple mono. So you want to edit with each sound clip in mono. So what I would do is mono. So I'll just format mono. I'm going to add another mono track. So I have mono. And now I can take my embedded channel 1 to audio 1 and my embedded channel 2 to audio 2. And what that does is it will treat it differently in the editing mode. So let's just go to edit. And I'm just going to create a new timeline. And again, you can check out, we have a lot of workshops on editing in Resolve and going beyond just the import, but this is really important. How do you set everything up? So import demo cut. Okay, so now the one that I did the multiple mono on is going to act a little bit differently. So these clips, if I bring them in, you can see that it's gone to audio 1 and it's stereo. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is add a mono track and add another mono track. And now when I click on this one, what I can do is actually tell this other clip, which is this one right here, to go into left and right as mono. So this is just something I like to show because every editor, we all work differently. Some of us like to have it in mono tracks, like a left and right that we can control. This would be really important, for example, in a documentary recording situation. You did your interview and you'd want to modify it to do that mono, embed channel 1, channel 2, because channel 1 might be your boom mic and channel 2 might be your lavalier mic, like the one I'm wearing here. So you want to be able to have those on the two different channels so you can easily turn one or the other off. Your boom might be noisy, something might happen, the lav might get hit if someone's talking. So you want to be able to turn those on or off and adjust them. If it's just stereo, you just have the ability to raise them both equally. So that multiple mono is really ideal for any kind of dialogue recording where the stereo is is not kind of final, or it's really separate tracks that are mono. So stereo is a left, right off the camera. Think of the mono, microphones are mono, so you definitely want to always have those as mono audio. So that's one of the little things I like to do in terms of prepping the footage, that kind of modification. Okay, let's continue with here. So now what we can do is, I'll just go back to media, and this is where I like to really prepare everything. So if I have the first shot here, we have this big name, A00900116, all this information. It's not gonna really tell me what it is. So I could do, scene 1, shot A, take 1, for example. Now I'm starting to identify and label everything, how it could be. So that's really interesting in how that can work, right? To be able to keep that process going and organizing and labeling everything. So then the next shot could be maybe that scene 1, shot D. It could be down the road, take 2, right? And we just keep going like that. And this might be something that's logged from the day. If you don't have anything like that, here's an example. Here's just, exterior of the Blue Mountains Public Library. So you can just write that. Just call it exterior Blue Mountains Public Library day, right? So the more you can label and identify what everything is, the better it is and the easier it will be for you to then do the editorial work after. So just keep labeling everything, identifying everything. So you can add the lookup tables if you wish, if it was shot in the raw mode. You can change the audio to the mono mode if you have it set up as microphones versus just stereo on the actual camera audio. So if you're using separate microphones or one microphone, mono really helps to work in that mono mode, so that you can control each track as an individual audio track versus just a combined linked stereo track. Again, these are just best practices. That's the way I like to set up my projects and work. And then we can go on from there. So we just keep labeling everything. Now, there's one more really cool thing that we can do. So here's the lookup table added. This is shot in the B RAW, the Blackmagic RAW. And the one thing that you can do is if you click on image, we can go to clip. And here, once I change it from project mode doesn't let you change the clip's attributes directly. So this is the raw attribute. So we can actually change what it looks like, how it was shot. So think of raw almost like a negative, or almost as a representation of the image as it was that day versus something that is like hard baked. So it's kind of like a recipe for a cake versus the actual baked cake. Regular ProRes or HD non-raw type files will be like a baked cake. You can, change it a little bit, but it's kind of pre-formulated and done. It's delivered as done. The raw file is like the recipe. So you can reconfigure it a little bit, make it a little bit sweeter or add a little less chocolate. So that's what we can do here. So I'll go to clip mode. And now what I can do is I can actually do different color sciences. It can get really complicated, but white balance. And I encourage, if you're just watching as an editor, it always helps to learn a little bit about the cinematography side as well. So I encourage you to look on our website, tbmcs.ca. I've posted that in the chat column as well. And you can check that website out, and we have our YouTube channel. And you can view some of the prior workshops that deal with the white balance and the color temperature settings and what it can do. And the editing, so this is what we can do. So white balance as shot, it was white balance as daylight. So, daylight. Now what I can do is I can actually make it as tungsten. And now it becomes blue. So I can trick the color temperature to make the daylight into tungsten. So it's taking the daylight, thinking that it's tungsten, and then it makes it blue. So this is like a day for night type of setting. So it's really interesting. And then I can also say, okay, it's cloudy. So I'm basically changing what my camera presets might be. So this is another thing too. You might make a mistake. Maybe you were shooting outside in tungsten mode. So you can then go into white balance and just click on fixing it. So if your footage is all blue, you can fix it to make it daylight balanced so that it won't be blue, right? So this is kind of where we can fix stuff in the Blackmagic Raw. So there's the different generation of the color science elements, color space. I'm in a Blackmagic design, but we can go to different color spaces, the straight rec 709. So there's the film mode. If I go to video mode, you can see now that's double color because I've done the lookup table plus the video mode. And that's something, an important differentiation, that the raw mode is a wrapper. But when I mean raw, it's also needs to be shot in what's called the film mode. So the Blackmagic Design Film Gamma is how a lot of times I recommend shooting with the Blackmagic camera, because that way it's that flat negative. It's the recipe for the cake, and then you can add all the color and how you want it afterwards instead of having it all baked in to begin with. So just a different differentiation there. So, and then you can see the two gamma levels here, right? In that. Now, you can apply LUTs here. I can take temperature away. I can change the ISO, so I can, see I can overexpose it, and then I can, change exposure down here. So it's a really robust tool that lets you retool, everything, and tinting, pre-tinting. So it lets you quickly retool what you've shot, how you've shot it, and this becomes the new final recipe of this image cake, and it's now presented in this kind of a method. So again, I can go back to project, and it's going to bring it back to my original settings, and then and then we can start again. So if you make any mistakes, just recycle the decode, and you can go from there. You can also decode it into different resolutions, so you can make things smaller for the playback purposes too, and go on from there. So really, really interesting stuff. And that's kind of the last playground of that. So bringing in all your footage, bins, bringing the footage in, labeling the footage, and to end it all off, what's really important is it still says untitled project. We're gonna have to go click, save up on the file, save project as. This is where I like to call what it is. So importing demo and save. It's going to have the little spinny circle, saving everything, and there we go. Now we have all our footage, and it's called importing demo. So now it's saved, and we're ready to continue editing. We can close, we can continue, and kind of move on from there. So it's a really robust tool in what we can do, and we can really keep going from there. So yeah, let me see if anybody has any questions. I'll just open it up to some questions now. I think we've covered everything. I'm just going to check my notes here, but yeah, definitely we've covered everything. So yeah, I can open it up to some questions here. Yeah, so it's just going to be in the chat window here. Okay, so here's one of the first questions. How does this work with your monitor settings? What should they be calibrated to? Really good question. So when it comes down to color grading, and how do you color grade and how to work with that, there's a couple ways. If you have a monitor that can go into a mode that's called Rec 709, that will be like a preset that follows the video standard for color grading, or very close to it. So if your monitor is capable of doing that, try to set it up in that way. So that could be like IMAX can be set up that way. You can actually say color Rec 709 in the mode. So there might be like iMac mode and so on. So every computer is a little bit different, but I know an iMac can be set up that way. And some higher end additional monitors or computer monitors can also be set up in that way. So that's one way. The other way is you can actually do a calibration. So there's these little calibration devices that you plug into the computer and to the monitor, and then you can calibrate so that it works a pretty close adjustment to make it exactly calibrated so that what you see is what you get. So, two ways. I find that if you're buying the calibration tool plus a monitor, you can also just buy a higher end graphics monitor. They usually call them photo or media monitors that have those presets built in, and they'll be precise right away. So it's kind of, same price. Just if you need to have a bunch of existing monitors and you want to just calibrate them, get a calibration device. They're about, I think they're, last I looked, about $300-400. You put it onto the monitor and then it does color sampling to get it to the right color level. And there's usually some software that you install and it makes it match. Or the monitor, you just go to the settings, either in the display settings of your computer or on the monitor itself. Some work that way too, and you can go Rec 709. I'd like to also say too, and if you're a member of the Blue Mountains Public Library, we do have a calibrated monitor, the Blackmagic Smart View, that is a Rec 709 dedicated video monitor. So that's something that can be done as well. If you can go there to test it. But yeah, really great question. So let me just see if there's anything else. Yeah, I definitely want to mention that, again, the key, the more you can get different, have multiple drives, multiple sources, and if you're investing in new drives, try to get a solid state external device. It's going to be really future friendly. They're pretty cost effective now, $200 roughly or so for 1 terabyte of a solid state drive. They're not very big. They can be, as tiny as, I have one right here. They actually come out a little bit smaller. So this is like the little 1 terabyte solid state drive. This is, this is a 500 gig. This is, I think, about $120 or so, $100 to $120. And they're great. So these can work directly. I should mention too, you can technically, the Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera, you can actually hook these drives, this particular drive, and let me just adjust the focus to here. So this drive could actually get hooked up right into there's a USB cable port in the back here, right here. So you can technically hook up the solid state hard drive into the Blackmagic camera and record directly to the hard drive. So it is a USB-C drive port, and you can put a solid state in there. Yeah, so that's a great way you can work as well. And then the beauty of that is that you take this drive goes to the computer, and you can keep these for each project, or you can treat it just like a SD card or CFast 2 card and offload it, erase it, reuse it. Or you can use it as a backup drive already, and then just put it onto your computer drive and store these. So, if there's a little bit of a budget, or, you can do your whole film on maybe 1 or 2 terabytes, you get a couple of these, and you can shoot and load with these, and it can save some time, and then you're just offloading. But definitely always do the backup so that it's not just on one drive. Yeah, so magnetic forces, there are, I'm still highly recommending to, avoid cell phones by the hard drives and data and stuff. They're less and less susceptible to it, but again, why risk it and try it out? So I always keep them separately. There is magnetic shielding. Even the speakers I'm using are magnetically shielded in my editing suite so that it doesn't add any interference. But yeah, speakers can be a problem. So definitely avoid speakers because a lot of them aren't shielded unless you know that you have computer shielded speakers. That's a big magnetic source. And I don't like putting cell phones, right on the drive or near the drive. So I always keep those separate because there could be some corruption even is bad enough trying to data save something. So I would definitely avoid that. Yeah, so then you can format the drives directly, the cards directly on the Blackmagic. Let me just see if there's some battery power here and I can show you guys. Yeah. Okay, So to format, you just go over here and I just hit format. And then you say whether it's the OS X extended for Apple or exFAT. And then you would just hit format, right? And then it's going to warn you, you're going to erase everything, and I'll say yes, format. Okay, and now what you need to do is hold it for 3 seconds, and this is all safety to make sure that it doesn't erase something that's important. So I'm going to hit 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's formatting. Okay, so this is a great way if you've taken it out from the library and you want to format the card before you return it, and you've offloaded all your footage. That's it. Format complete, ready to go, and you can see 55 minutes and it's totally empty. So that's the way you can format it right in the camera. And that's the best practice. People like to do that. I will sometimes format it on the computer as well if I'm, already have it attached just to save some time. But formatting on the camera is fantastic because it's it's going to work on the camera if the camera's formatted it a way that it can read it and write it already. So it's kind of a pre-test. So formatting on the camera is great. Once the drive's starting to go, how do you recognize that? Great question. The main way you recognize the drive starting to fail is essentially if it's a regular spinning type of drive, you'll start to hear some clattering and it will start to slow down. And when you install Blackmagic Resolve, there's something called disk speed. There's a Blackmagic speed test, sorry. And that's, you can actually do that to test how fast the drive goes. Yeah, let me just, we got a moment here, so let's just have a look at that. So what I can do is, I'll just go over here and find that in my launch pad. Should be here somewhere. Let's have a look. Raw speed test, Media Express. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here's like the Blackmagic disk speed test. So I'm going to double click that. I'm going to choose my drive. So I have my kind of normal drive here. I'm going to hit open for my system drive, and then you hit speed test start. So it's telling me that I got 260 to almost 300, about 300. It's actually going pretty good, megabits per second. Then it tells you what you can do. It tells you can do all the ProRes all the way to 4K, and it's a read and write. So the writing is, how can it write stuff to, rendering to it. The reading is the most important when you're just editing and not doing a lot of extra effects because it needs to be able to read fast. So you can see I'm reaching a pretty good speed. This is normal drives set up as a RAID. So I have 4 2TB drives set up as a RAID for 8TB drive, and you can do it all through Mac OS. So that's something that we can look at in the future too, setting up some editing drives. So yeah, I do recommend, one more question here, formatting each time, and you can reuse the cards, and you don't have to format the solid state drive unless you're shooting with it. And you might want to keep your footage on that as your backup. So it's kind of it's a good way if you're doing a documentary. You might get 1 or 2 solid state drives and just shoot with those and keep your footage on those. And that could be a really great way to work as well. So yeah, that's it. That's perfect. So yeah, thanks everyone for the questions, and I hope that that really helped in terms of kind of addressing some of these issues, getting things started, going over how it works with the camera, and where we can go from there. So definitely check out our website, tbmcs.ca, and that speed test. Yeah, I saw one more question come in here. That is totally comes when you load the free Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve software or the studio version if you're getting that. It does come with it, so it loads that automatically because that's an important part. So yeah, so thanks again for joining us on this exciting kind of prep, and it's technical workshop, but really important to get things organized before you start editing. I want to thank all our partners in making this happen. We have the Canada Council for the Arts and our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. Once again, my name is Tom Strnad. Thanks for joining us, and you can rewatch this. Direct link will be available. It's a private link. So once it's done, the live, it will be archived and you can rewatch it. We just started with Vimeo, so if there's any technical issues, we will also be posting it on our YouTube channel, so you can always catch it there. Thanks again, and please check out more of our upcoming workshops that are coming up throughout March and all the way through till October is our next phase. So lots of workshops coming up. So we hope to see you at more. Thanks again. Take care.